A billionaire single CEO knocked on my door alone. What she said made a lone black man cry. Booker Williams wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished installing new locks on his small apartment door in downtown Detroit. At 31, he'd learned that safety came from being prepared, not from trusting the world to be kind to a black man living alone. The neighborhood wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the best either. Most of his neighbors were working families just trying to get by, and they looked out for each other. Booker had been here for 3 years, ever since he'd lost his job at the automotive plant and couldn't afford his house payments anymore. He was settling in for the evening, heating up leftover chili and reviewing job applications on his laptop, when someone knocked on his door. Not the usual neighbor knock. This was hesitant, almost nervous. Booker looked through the peephole and nearly dropped his bowl. Standing in his dingy hallway was a white woman in what looked like a designer coat, her blonde hair perfect despite the October wind, holding an expensive purse, like it might protect her from her surroundings. She looked completely out of place, like a diamond in a tool shed. "Can I help you?" he called through the door, not opening it. Beautiful white women didn't show up at his apartment with good news. "Are you Booker Williams?" Her voice was clear, educated, the kind of voice that belonged in boardrooms and country clubs. "Depends who's asking." "My name is Scarlett Montgomery. I'm the CEO of Montgomery Industries. I need to speak with you about something important." Booker's blood ran cold. Montgomery Industries, the massive corporation that owned half of Detroit's real estate, including the automotive plant where he'd worked for 8 years before they'd downsized his entire department. He opened the door slowly, keeping the chain lock in place. "What could the CEO of Montgomery Industries possibly want with me?" Scarlett looked up at him through the crack in the door, and he was surprised to see something that looked like shame in her blue eyes. "Mr. Williams, I've made a terrible mistake. Several terrible mistakes, actually, and I need to make them right. Lady, I don't know what you're talking about, but please." Her voice cracked slightly. "I know how this looks. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I'm not here as a CEO. I'm here as someone who destroyed your life, and I need to try to fix it." Booker stared at her through the gap in the door, his mind racing. What could she possibly mean? "5 minutes, he said finally, unlatching the chain. "You get 5 minutes to explain yourself." What happened next would change both their lives forever. Hello, my Stop Racism family. Thank you for tuning in today. Before we dive deeper into this beautiful love story, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your country and state in the comments below. Also, I'd love to know your thoughts. What did you think of the story so far? Do you believe love can truly conquer prejudice? Let us know in the comments. We love reading them. And trust me, your words motivate us to keep making these videos. Let's make this video reach at least 50 comments. Your support means the world to us, and it drives us to create even more emotional content for you. So don't forget to comment, share, and keep spreading love. Scarlett stepped into Booker's small but clean apartment, her designer heels clicking on the worn linoleum. She looked around, taking in the second-hand furniture, the carefully organized space, the job applications spread across a folding table that served as his desk. "Nice place?" she said. And to his surprise, she sounded like she meant it. "Cut the small talk. You said you destroyed my life. What are you talking about?" Scarlett sat heavily in his only armchair, suddenly looking less like a powerful CEO and more like a woman carrying an enormous burden. 3 years ago, Montgomery Industries bought the automotive plant where you worked. Do you remember the circumstances of your termination? Downsizing, budget cuts, last hired, first fired? The words still tasted bitter in his mouth. That's what we told everyone, but it wasn't the truth. Scarlett's voice was barely above a whisper. "Mr. Williams, you were specifically targeted for termination." Booker felt the room tilt. "What? Your supervisor, Jake Morrison, came to me with concerns about your work performance. He said you were insubordinate, unreliable, possibly stealing tools." She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "I believed him. I authorized your immediate termination without investigating further. But I was employee of the month 4 times. I never stole anything. I know that now." Scarlett's voice was thick with guilt. "Last month, Morrison was arrested for embezzling over $200,000 from company accounts. During the investigation, We found evidence that he'd been systematically targeting black employees, making false reports to get them fired so he could hire his friends and family members. Booker sank onto his couch, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. You destroyed my career based on the word of a racist thief. Yes, the simple admission seemed to cost her everything. You lost your job, your health insurance, your house. You've been struggling for 3 years because I was too lazy and too prejudiced to question whether a black man could really be as problematic as my white supervisor claimed. Why are you telling me this now? Because Morrison named you specifically during his confession. He laughed about how easy it was to convince me that you were trouble. Said I believed him because deep down, people like me always assume people like you are the problem. Scarlett stood up, pacing to his small window that overlooked the street. He was right, Mr. Williams. I did assume the worst about you because you were a young black man and he was an older white supervisor. I didn't even look at your performance reviews. I just believed the stereotype. So, what now? You apologize and go back to your mansion feeling better about yourself? No, Scarlett said, turning to face him. Now I spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. What do you mean, make it right? Booker's voice was sharp with suspicion and pain. Scarlett pulled out a thick manila folder from her expensive handbag. First, Montgomery Industries is prepared to offer you a settlement of $500,000 for wrongful termination and the discrimination you suffered. Booker's eyes widened. $500,000 was more money than he'd ever imagined having. But there's more, Scarlett continued. We want to offer you your job back, with a promotion to floor supervisor and a salary of $75,000 a year. Full benefits, pension, everything. Why would you do this? Because it's the right thing to do. Because you deserved better than what happened to you. She paused, choosing her words carefully. And because I need someone I can trust to help me make sure this never happens to anyone. Booker stared at her, trying to process what was happening. 3 years of struggle, of wondering if he'd done something wrong, of applying for jobs and being turned down, of eating ramen noodles and choosing between electricity and groceries. And now this woman was offering him everything back, plus more. What's the catch? No catch. But I do have a request. Scarlett's voice grew uncertain. I want you to help me understand what I've been blind to. I want you to help me change Montgomery Industries from the inside, to create policies and procedures that prevent discrimination. I want you to help me become the kind of CEO who deserves the power I have. Why me? Because you lived through the consequences of my ignorance. Because you know what it feels like to be judged by your skin color instead of your character. Because, she hesitated, then pushed forward. Because I think you might be one of the few people willing to tell me the truth about who I've been. Booker walked to his window, looking out at the street where kids were playing despite the cold, where neighbors helped each other carry groceries, where people made community out of nothing. Ms. Montgomery, do you know what the hardest part of the last 3 years has been? What? Not the poverty, not the struggle to find work, not even losing my house. He turned to face her. The hardest part was wondering if maybe Morrison was right. Maybe I wasn't as good as I thought I was. Maybe I deserved what happened. Scarlett's face crumpled. Mr. Williams, I'm so sorry. You made me doubt myself in ways that went deeper than money or employment. You made me question my own worth. His voice was steady but filled with pain. So yes, I'll take your job, and I'll help you change your company, but not because I forgive you. Then why? Because other people deserve better than what you gave me. 2 weeks later, Booker walked through the doors of Montgomery Industries' corporate headquarters for the first time. The gleaming lobby with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers was a world away from the factory floor where he'd once worked. Mr. Williams, a young receptionist, Destiny Cole, smiled at him warmly. Miss Montgomery is waiting for you in the executive conference room. As Booker rode the elevator to the 20th floor, he caught glimpses of his reflection in the polished steel doors. He'd bought his first suit in years for this moment. Not expensive, but clean and professional. He looked like he belonged here, even if he didn't feel like it yet. The conference room was full of executives, all white except for one older black woman who nodded at him encouragingly. At the head of the table sat Scarlett, looking every inch the powerful CEO in her tailored business suit. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Booker Williams, our new Director of Employee Relations and Workplace Equity. The title was bigger than what she'd originally offered, and Booker realized she'd been thinking about this, expanding her vision of what needed to change. Booker will be conducting a comprehensive review of our hiring, promotion, and disciplinary procedures across all divisions, Scarlett continued. He has full authority to investigate any complaints of discrimination and to recommend policy changes. One of the executives, an older white man with skeptical eyes, leaned forward. What exactly qualifies Mr. Williams for this position? Before Booker could answer, Scarlett spoke with steel in her voice. Mr. Williams is qualified because he experienced firsthand the failures in our system. He's qualified because he spent 8 years as an exemplary employee who was wrongfully terminated due to racial bias. He's qualified because he understands the human cost of the policies we're here to fix. After the meeting, Scarlett walked Booker to his new office, a corner space with windows overlooking downtown Detroit. "This is incredible," Booker said, still processing the magnitude of the change in his life. "It's a start," Scarlett replied. "Booker, I want you to know that I understand you don't trust me yet. I understand that this job doesn't erase what I did to you, but I'm hoping that working together, we can prevent other people from going through what you went through." "Ms. Montgomery, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why does this matter to you so much? You could have just written a check and moved on." Scarlett was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city below. "Because for the first time in my life, I'm seeing the real consequences of my actions. Because I realized that being powerful means being responsible for how that power affects other people's lives. And because," she paused, "because meeting you has shown me the kind of person I want to become." Over the next month, Booker dove into his new role with the passion of someone who lived the problems he was now trying to solve. He interviewed employees across all levels of the company, reviewed hundreds of personnel files, and uncovered patterns that made his stomach turn. "Scarlett," he said, walking into her office with a thick report. They'd moved to first names after she'd insisted that formality felt wrong when they were working so closely together. "You need to see this." She looked up from her computer, and he noticed she looked tired. The weight of discovering her company's systemic problems was taking a toll on her. "What did you find?" "In the past 5 years, Montgomery Industries has terminated 67 employees. 51 of them were people of color. The reasons given were almost identical. Attitude problems, cultural fit issues, communication challenges." Scarlett's face went pale. 67 people. 67 families affected. 67 people who went home and wondered if they'd done something wrong. Booker sat across from her desk. "But here's what's interesting. I also found the supervisors who've been recommending these terminations. It's the same 12 people over and over, including Morrison. Morrison was just the tip of the iceberg. We have an entire network of middle management that's been systematically removing diversity from this company." Scarlett put her head in her hands. "How did I let this happen under my nose?" "Because you weren't looking for it. And because people like Morrison are experts at telling people like you what they think you want to hear." "People like me," she repeated quietly. "Scarlett, can I be honest with you about something?" She looked up. "Always. When you first came to my apartment, part of me thought this was some kind of publicity stunt. Rich white CEO makes grand gesture to assuage her guilt. And now I see how hard you're working to change things. I see you staying late, questioning every policy, pushing back against executives who don't like the changes we're making." Booker leaned forward. "I see someone who's genuinely committed to doing better. But I also see someone who's carrying guilt that's eating her alive. You can't undo the past, Scarlett. You can only do better going forward." Scarlett was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "Booker, I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Am I doing this right? Am I making real change? Or am I just making myself feel better?" "You're doing it right, but you're also isolating yourself. When's the last time you took a day off? When's the last time you did something that wasn't about fixing Montgomery Industries? Everyone deserves rest. Everyone deserves happiness. Even people who've made mistakes. Something shifted in the air between them. An intimacy born of honesty and shared purpose. How's this story hitting you so far? Tell us in the comments. If you're loving it, type 1. If not, type 0. We want to know what you think. I have an idea, Booker said suddenly. What if we organized a company-wide listening session? Not a formal meeting, but something where employees can share their experiences honestly. You think people will be honest with me in the room? Not with you in the room as CEO. With you in the room as someone who's learning. Booker studied her face. Scarlett, people need to see that you're not just fixing policies. You're changing as a person. The listening session was held the following Friday in the company cafeteria. Scarlett had dressed down, wearing simple slacks and a blouse instead of her usual power suit. She sat in a circle with 30 employees. No podium, no corporate presentation, just people talking. Monica Washington, a black woman from accounting, was the first to speak. I've been here 7 years. In that time, I've applied for 6 promotions. I've been told I'm not ready for each one, but I've watched white colleagues with less experience get moved up around me. Carlos Mendoza from maintenance added, my supervisor constantly questions whether I understand instructions, speaks to me slowly like I'm stupid. But I have an engineering degree from University of Michigan. As the stories continued, Booker watched Scarlett's face transform. He could see her beginning to understand the daily reality of being a person of color in her company. The microaggressions, the assumptions, the barriers that were invisible to her, but overwhelming to those who faced them. Ms. Montgomery, said Jamal Foster from the loading dock, we appreciate you being here, but we need to know, is this real change? Or are we going to be talking to the same supervisors who've been making our lives difficult next week? Scarlett stood up slowly. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but full of emotion. Jamal, I can't promise that change will happen overnight, but I can promise that the supervisors who've been discriminating against you will face consequences. Some of them will be terminated. Others will be required to undergo intensive bias training or face dismissal. She paused, looking around the circle. I can also promise that I'm going to keep showing up to these sessions, not as your CEO, but as someone who's learning about experiences I never took the time to understand before. After the session, Booker found Scarlett in her office, staring out the window with tears in her eyes. Are you okay? I had no idea, she whispered. I knew we had problems, but I didn't understand the human cost. These people have been suffering while I convinced myself everything was fine. But now you know. And knowledge is the first step toward change. Booker, how do I earn their trust? How do I prove that this isn't just temporary guilt? You keep showing up, you keep listening, and you keep proving through your actions that their experiences matter to you. 3 months into working together, Booker noticed that Scarlett had changed in ways that went beyond corporate policies. She'd started eating lunch in the company cafeteria instead of her office, learning employees' names, asking about their families. But she'd also grown quieter, more thoughtful, as if the weight of what she'd discovered was reshaping her understanding of herself. Scarlett, he said one evening when he found her still in the office at 9 p.m., you need to go home. I'm fine. I just want to finish reviewing these performance evaluations to make sure we're not missing any patterns of bias. When's the last time you had dinner? A real dinner, not vending machine coffee and granola bars. She looked up from her computer, and he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. I don't remember. Come on. Booker stood up and held out his hand. I'm buying you dinner. Booker, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're running yourself into the ground, and that doesn't help anyone. They ended up at Ruby's Soul Food, a small restaurant in Booker's neighborhood. Scarlett looked around nervously at first, clearly out of her element, but the warmth of the place and the incredible smell of home cooking gradually relaxed her. This is amazing, she said after tasting the fried chicken and mac and cheese. How did you find this place? Mrs. Ruby has been feeding this neighborhood for 20 years. When I lost my job, she used to let me work in the kitchen for meals when I couldn't pay. She helped you survive. People in this community look out for each other. We have to. No one else will. Scarlett was quiet for a moment, processing this. Booker, can I ask you something personal? What was it really like those 3 years after I fired you? He set down his fork, considering how much to share. Dark. There were nights I wondered if I'd ever work again. Days when I questioned everything about myself, my skills, my worth, my future. I applied for hundreds of jobs and got rejection after rejection. I'm sorry, she whispered, but you know what kept me going? My community. My neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, who brought me groceries when she knew I was struggling. The guys at the community center who helped me keep my skills sharp. Ruby, who made sure I didn't go hungry. You had people who believed in you. I had people who saw my humanity when the corporate world saw me as disposable. Booker looked at her directly. Scarlett, you've been trying to carry all this guilt alone, but you don't have to. You have people who want to help you do better. Do I? Sometimes I feel like everyone just tolerates me because I'm the CEO. Not everyone. I see you fighting for change every day. I see you listening and learning and growing. That matters. For the first time since he'd known her, Scarlett smiled. Not her corporate smile, but something real and warm. The crisis came 6 months after. Booker had started his new position. Regional Manager Todd Brennan, one of Montgomery Industries' longest-serving executives, had filed a complaint with the board of directors claiming that Scarlett's diversity initiatives were reverse discrimination against white employees. He's calling for your resignation, Booker told Scarlett as they reviewed the formal complaint in her office. He's got support from several other executives who think you're going too far, too fast. Maybe they're right, Scarlett said quietly. Maybe I am overcompensating. Are you serious right now? Booker's voice was sharper than usual. Scarlett, in 6 months, we've identified and corrected systematic discrimination that affected hundreds of employees. We've created fair promotion processes, implemented bias training, and given people who were wrongfully terminated a chance to return with full benefits. But if the board thinks, the board is worried about protecting the status quo that benefited them for years. Booker stood up, pacing to her window. Todd Brennan was Morrison's mentor. He taught Morrison how to get away with discrimination by making it look like performance management. How do you know that? Because I've been investigating him. Brennan has overseen the termination of 83 people of color in his 15 years as regional manager. 83, Scarlett. And somehow, none of them were ever culture fits. Scarlett stared at the complaint, then at Booker, then back at the papers. What do you think I should do? I think you should fight. I think you should present the evidence we've gathered to the board and force them to choose between maintaining a discriminatory system and building something better. And if they choose to maintain the system, if they fire me, then you'll know you did the right thing, even when it was hard. Scarlett was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at him with something new in her eyes, not just determination, but trust. Booker, will you present the findings with me? Will you stand beside me when I face the board? You want me to present to your board of directors? I want my partner in this fight to be there when we make our case. The word partner hung in the air between them, carrying more weight than just professional collaboration. Yes, Booker said, I'll stand with you. That evening, as they prepared their presentation, working side by side until late in the night, Scarlett said something that changed everything. Booker, I need you to know something. This fight, this work we're doing, it's not just about making amends for my mistakes anymore. It's about building the kind of company, the kind of world that I want to exist, and I can't imagine doing it with anyone else. Scarlett, I know it's complicated. I know our history makes this difficult. But somewhere in these months of working together, fighting together, you've become the most important person in my life. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they were ready to cross. The boardroom at Montgomery Industries had never felt more like a battleground. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, with Todd Brennan at one end, looking smugly confident, and Scarlett at the other, with Booker beside her, their presentation materials spread before them. Ladies and gentlemen, Scarlett began, her voice steady and strong. 6 months ago, we discovered that Montgomery Industries had systematically discriminated against employees of color for over a decade. Today, we're here to discuss whether we want to continue that legacy or build something better. Board member Patricia Webb leaned forward skeptically. Ms. Montgomery, Mr. Brennan has raised concerns that your reforms are creating a hostile work environment for our longtime employees. Let me be clear about what Mr. Brennan considers hostile, Booker said, standing to activate their presentation screen. Equal promotion opportunities, fair performance reviews, the the requirement that supervisors provide evidence before terminating employees. The data they presented was devastating. Chart after chart showed the patterns of discrimination, the financial cost of lawsuits and settlements, the productivity losses from high turnover among talented employees of color. These reforms aren't reverse discrimination, Scarlett continued. They're simply discrimination prevention. We're asking supervisors to treat all employees fairly, regardless of race. Todd Brennan stood up, his face red with indignation. This is exactly the problem. We're being told we can't trust our own judgment, can't manage our own departments. We're walking on eggshells around certain employees because of their skin color. No, Todd. Booker's voice was calm but firm. You're being asked to manage all employees with the same standards you've always applied to white employees. If that feels like walking on eggshells, maybe you should examine why. I don't need to take lectures from someone who was fired for cause. The room fell silent. Scarlett stood up slowly, her voice ice cold. Todd, Mr. Williams was terminated based on false reports that you approved without investigation. He was fired because Morrison knew you would believe a white supervisor over a black employee without evidence. That's not management. That's racism. Board Chairman Robert Hayes cleared his throat. Ms. Montgomery, while we appreciate your passion for this issue, we need to consider the practical implications. Perhaps we could implement these changes more gradually. No. Scarlett's response was immediate and firm. We will not gradually stop discriminating against our employees. We will not slowly start treating people fairly. The time for half measures ended the day we discovered what was happening in this company. She looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. I'm asking you to choose. We can continue running a company that systematically fails its employees of color, faces constant legal challenges, and loses talented people to our competitors. Or we can build a company that attracts the best talent regardless of background, creates an environment where everyone can succeed, and leads our industry in both profits and principles. And if we choose the status quo? Patricia Webb asked. Then I'll resign, and you can explain to our shareholders why the CEO stepped down rather than compromise on basic human decency. The vote wasn't even close. 8-4 in favor of continuing the reforms. As they left the boardroom, Booker realized he was shaking. How's this story hitting you so far? Tell us in the comments. If you're loving it, type 1. If not, type 0. We want to know what you think. That evening, Scarlett and Booker found themselves back at Ruby's Soul Food, celebrating their victory with plates of comfort food and glasses of sweet tea. The relief of winning the board vote had left them both emotionally exhausted, but oddly exhilarated. I can't believe we did that, Scarlett said, laughing for the first time in weeks. I actually threatened to resign in front of the entire board. You were incredible in there. I've never seen anyone stand up to those old boys like that. I had help, she said, looking at him meaningfully. I couldn't have done it without you. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, both processing what had happened and what it meant for the future of Montgomery Industries. But there was something else hanging between them. The conversation from the night before that had been interrupted by preparation for the board meeting. Booker, Scarlett said finally, setting down her fork, about what I said last night. Scarlett, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because it's true and because I can't keep pretending it's not. She took a deep breath. 6 months ago, I knocked on your door to ease my guilt about destroying your life. But working with you, getting to know you, seeing your strength and your integrity and your compassion, it's changed me in ways I never expected. Scarlett, I know this is complicated. I know our history makes everything difficult. I know you have every reason not to trust me with your heart after what I did to your life. Her voice was soft but determined. But I also know that I've fallen in love with you, and I needed you to hear that from me. Booker stared at her across the small table. This powerful woman who turned her entire company upside down to right the wrongs she'd committed, who'd stood up to her own board rather than compromise her principles, who'd somehow seen him as worth fighting for when the world had written him off. You want to know something crazy? He said quietly. What? I've fallen in love with you too, even though every logical part of my brain says I shouldn't. Even though you represent everything that went wrong in my life. He reached across the table and took her hand. But you also represent everything that's gone right in the past 6 months. So, what happens now? Now we figure it out together. We take it slow, we're honest with each other, and we keep building something good, both at work and in our personal lives. Scarlett's smile was radiant. I'd like that. But Scarlett, I need you to understand something. If we're going to do this, it can't be about guilt or making amends. It has to be about two people who choose each other. I choose you, Booker Williams, not because of what I owe you, but because of who you are. Then I choose you too, Scarlett Montgomery. All of you. The CEO, the reformer, and the woman who's brave enough to change. 6 months later, Montgomery Industries had become unrecognizable from the company it had been a year earlier. The changes went beyond policies and procedures. They'd created a culture where diversity wasn't just tolerated, but celebrated, where employees felt safe reporting problems, and where advancement was based on merit rather than bias. The third quarter numbers are in, Booker announced, walking into Scarlett's office with a smile that had become a regular feature of her days. Productivity is up 18%. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high, and we've had 0 discrimination complaints filed against us. And recruitment? Our talent acquisition team says we're getting applications from top candidates who specifically want to work for a company with our values. We're not just avoiding lawsuits, we're becoming the employer of choice in our industry. Scarlett leaned back in her chair, marveling at how different her office felt now. Where once it had been a sterile corporate space, it now displayed artwork from local artists, photos from company community service projects, and thank you notes from employees whose lives had been changed by their reforms. There's something else, Booker said, closing the door behind him and moving to sit on the edge of her desk, a familiarity that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Channel 7, News wants to do a feature story about our transformation. They're calling it From Discrimination to Innovation, how one company changed its culture. Will you do it with me? As your director of employee relations? Or as your boyfriend? His smile was teasing but warm. Both. I want people to see what's possible when someone is brave enough to admit they were wrong and work to do better. Their relationship had developed slowly, carefully, with full awareness of how unusual their situation was. They'd attended counseling together to navigate the complex dynamics of their shared history, had been transparent with employees about their relationship, and had implemented policies to ensure no conflicts of interest affected their professional decisions. Booker, can I tell you something? Always. A year ago, I thought success meant having power over other people. I thought being a good CEO meant making tough decisions without worrying about who got hurt. And now I know that real success means using your power to lift other people up. That being a good leader means creating opportunities for everyone to succeed, not just people who look like you or think like you. Booker stood up and moved around the desk to wrap his arms around her. You've become an amazing leader, Scarlett. But more importantly, you've become an amazing person. I had a good teacher, she said, leaning into his embrace. We taught each other. You taught me that people can change, that forgiveness is possible, that love can grow, even from the most unlikely circumstances. That evening, as they walked through downtown Detroit together, Scarlett marveled at how much her world had expanded. A year ago, she'd lived in a bubble of wealth and privilege, insulated from the real experiences of the people who worked for her. Now she knew the names of the vendors at the farmer's market, had friends in Booker's neighborhood, and understood that community came from connection, not just geography. Mrs. Johnson, Booker called out to an elderly black woman tending her front garden. How's your grandson doing at Wayne State? Just made the dean's list. She beamed, then turned to Scarlett. And how are you doing, honey? Booker tells me you two are getting serious. We are, Scarlett said, no longer feeling awkward about being the only white face in conversations like this. He's taught me so much about what real community looks like. That boy's got a good heart, Mrs. Johnson said approvingly. You hold on to him. As they continued their walk, Scarlett reflected on how love had changed both of them. Booker had learned to trust again, to believe that not everyone would let him down. She had learned to listen, to question her assumptions, and to use her privilege as a tool for justice rather than just personal gain. Booker, she said as they reached her car, Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to your door that night? You mean if you'd just sent a lawyer with a settlement check? Or if I'd done nothing at all? Booker considered this seriously. I think I would have survived. I'm stronger than I used to give myself credit for. But I wouldn't have thrived the way I have with you by my side. And I would still be the kind of CEO who destroyed people's lives without even knowing it, Scarlett said quietly. I would still be living in a world where I never had to confront the consequences of my actions. But you did come to my door, and you did the hard work of change. That matters. We did the hard work together. As Scarlett drove home to her house, no longer a mansion that felt like a museum, but a warm space where Booker spent more nights than not, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with guilt and shame, with her desperate need to make amends for the harm she'd caused. But somewhere along the way, it had become something beautiful, a partnership built on mutual respect, a love that had grown from honest confrontation of hard truths, and a shared commitment to using their combined power to make the world a little more fair. 1 year after the board meeting that had changed everything, Scarlett and Booker found themselves back where their professional relationship had begun, in the conference room where she'd first introduced him to the Montgomery Industries executive team. But this time, the room was filled with employees from every level of the company, celebrating the first annual Excellence in Equity Awards, recognition for supervisors, teams, and individuals who had gone above and beyond to create an inclusive workplace. Before we announce this year's winners, Scarlett said from the podium, I want to share something personal with all of you. Booker looked up from his seat in the front row, wondering where she was going with this. 2 years ago, I was a CEO who thought leadership meant making decisions in isolation, who believed that success was measured only in profit margins, who was so removed from the daily experiences of my employees that I could destroy someone's life without even realizing it. She looked directly at Booker, her voice growing stronger. The man sitting in the front row taught me that real leadership means listening to people who have different experiences than your own. He taught me that true success means creating opportunities for everyone, not just those who already have advantages. He taught me that love, real love, isn't about finding someone perfect, but about choosing to grow and change together. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people began to realize this was about more than just corporate transformation. Booker Williams, Scarlett said, stepping away from the podium and pulling out a small velvet box. You've made me a better leader, a better person, and a better partner. You've shown me what it means to fight for justice, to forgive without forgetting, and to build something beautiful from something broken. She dropped to one knee in front of 200 employees, her voice carrying clearly through the now silent room. Will you marry me? The room erupted in cheers and applause as Booker stared at her in shock, then joy, then overwhelming love. Scarlett Montgomery, he said, standing and pulling her to her feet. Are you seriously proposing to me in front of your entire company? Our company, she corrected. And yes, I am. Because I want everyone to see that when you find someone worth fighting for, you don't hide that love. You celebrate it. In that case, Booker said, taking the ring and slipping it onto his finger. Yes. Yes to marrying you. Yes to building a life together. And yes to continuing to change the world, one person, one policy, one act of love at a time. As they kissed in front of their cheering employees, Scarlett thought about the night she'd knocked on his apartment door, desperate to ease her guilt. She'd expected to make amends and move on with her life. Instead, she'd found her partner, her conscience, and her heart. The transformation of Montgomery Industries had been remarkable, but the transformation of Scarlett and Booker, from CEO and victim to partners in love and justice, had been nothing short of miraculous. 2 years later, Dr. Scarlett Montgomery Williams stood at the podium of the National Conference on Corporate Social Responsibility, looking out at an audience of business leaders from across the country. Beside her sat her husband Booker Williams, now Vice President of Social Impact at Montgomery Industries, and their 6-month-old daughter Justice, who was napping peacefully in her carrier. When we started this journey, Scarlett began, we thought we were just fixing a broken HR system. We had no idea we were actually rebuilding the soul of our company. The numbers spoke for themselves. Montgomery Industries had become the most diverse major corporation in Michigan, with a 95% employee retention rate and productivity levels that were the envy of their industry. But more importantly, they'd become a model for how businesses could drive social change while remaining profitable. The question I get asked most often, Scarlett continued, is how we convinced our shareholders to support such dramatic changes. The answer is simple. We showed them that doing the right thing is also good business. After her presentation, she and Booker walked through downtown Detroit, justice strapped to her father's chest, taking in the changes that had transformed the city alongside their company. Montgomery Industries had relocated their headquarters to downtown Detroit, bringing hundreds of high-paying jobs to the urban core and spurring development throughout the area. "Look at that," Booker said, pointing to a new community center funded by the Montgomery Foundation. "Kids who grow up in that neighborhood are going to have opportunities we could never have imagined when we started this journey." "Speaking of opportunities," Scarlett said, pulling out her phone to show him an email, "Harvard Business School wants us to teach a course on transformational leadership and social justice in corporate settings. Us? Together?" They specifically requested both of us. They said our story represents a new model for how personal transformation can drive institutional change. Justice stirred in her carrier, opening eyes that were the perfect blend of her parents' features. Booker's deep brown mixed with flecks of Scarlett's blue, creating a unique hazel that seemed to shift in different light. "What do you think, baby girl?" Booker cooed to his daughter. "Should Mama and Daddy go teach other people how to fall in love while fighting injustice?" "I think," Scarlett said, wrapping her arms around both her husband and daughter, "that justice is going to grow up in a world where love is stronger than prejudice, where people take responsibility for their mistakes, and where everyone has the opportunity to succeed regardless of what they look like or where they come from, because of what we built together. Because of what we're still building together." As they walked home through the city they'd helped transform, past the company that had become a beacon of possibility, toward the house where their love had taught them both that redemption was possible, Scarlett reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a knock on a door and a confession of terrible mistakes. It had become a testament to the power of love to transform not just hearts, but entire communities. And it would continue, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time.